So, you've taken a struggling player out of your lineup. When is the right time to put him back? We'll answer that question and others, plus a deep dive into the Cincinnati Reds, waiver wire, pitcher preview, and your mailbag questions. Jeff Erickson of RotoWire joins us next on Beat the Shift. Welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always, Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, feeling so much better from the last couple of weeks where I had a cold that just wouldn't go away. You ever have that, Ruvain?
I have, and my son has it, and you know what? You just get through it. It's a thing where sometimes the cough just doesn't go away, and that's what happened to you.
Yeah, big day all around baseball. Logan Gilbert is up for the Mariners, and I don't know who that other person is who's leading off for them. Have you heard of this guy, Kellen? Who's that?
I don't know, but I know the Mariners brought up a Met. I thought it was Paul Sewald, though.
Maybe. We don't really know who this Kellenick guy is.
Okay,
I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anyways, we got a great show for you tonight. Joining us from RotoWire, also a SiriusXM host in middays every day of the week, none other than Jeff Erickson. How are you, Jeff?
Doing well. I was looking at our daily lineups page, and I saw Robinson Cano batting leadoff for the Mariners. Oh, sorry, it's too soon.
Oh, boy. That's just going to this is day one of this. This is just going to be a reminder every day how our team just traded away its future.
Well, we have a closer, so that counts for something.
There you go.
That's true. Mariners have a closer, too. It's a pretty good one when they use him as such. But I'm all aboard the Graveman train.
Yep. Well, today's show is about returnees. And what I mean is, sometimes you have players on your team who are out for some reason. Either they're in the minors or they're hurt or they're just bad and you're sitting them. Question is when to put them back, how to use them. So we'll talk about that strategy element right here in the show. So before we talk about that, Jeff, just generally, how are you doing in your leagues? How's the year going so far in the first 6 weeks?
Pretty good so far. I mean, some good teams, some bad teams. Actually, the Beat Jeff Erickson teams, the RotoWire Online Championship, the 12-teamers aren't doing well. I'm doing much better in the 15-teamers. You and I are up against each other in TGFBI. It's annoying how you got Garrett Cole at 9, but and we talked earlier in draft season how I love being in the middle of the draft. You like it too. And you find some good things. We weren't next to each other, so it's not exactly like you sniped me all the time, but you took a lot of players that I was considering taking in rounds where it's coming back to me in even numbered rounds. And it's just like I felt like we were kind of on the same page, at least on some players. And Ian Kahn's also got a good team in there. And the three of us are all up at the top of that league. You're leading it right now. And I'm hoping to say right now and not forever, but it's a good league, and I'm looking forward to playing this one out. Should be a lot of fun. But all in all, pretty good season so far.
Yeah, it is a great league that we're in right now. A lot of great players here. And, you're right about the thing in the middle is, when you're picking at the end, which you did, you have to make a decision. Do I jump and reach for a guy who probably should go about 15 picks, 25 picks later, but, of course, if I don't grab him now, he won't be there 30 picks later. And lo and behold, I was in the middle, snatching him up 6 picks or so before you. It's one of these things that even though you might theoretically be able to get one of the top 4 players, and that's a tremendous value even for the spot. I mean, having an Acuna right at the top is phenomenal. But in the middle of the draft, in all the other rounds, you're able to only have to reach 5, 6, 7 picks per player rather than 25 picks. And that adds up time over time. And that's why I think that playing in the middle is just a game theory reason as to why that's better. I mean, think about it this way. When you're picking in the middle, you have to make a decision about who to pick, and you pick a player. When you're at the end, you're basically getting one bit of information. Here's my time to pick, and you have to make 2 decisions. You got to pick 2 players with only half the information that you're getting as opposed to in the middle. So I think there's just a disadvantage picking at either end.
Yeah, often we talk about on our show the spectrum between genius and agnostic in terms of your picking style. Genius is you target your guys, you're willing to reach from your get your guys sort of type of draft. Agnostic is I'm going to value take. I'm going to wait, see what what the draft gives me. Now, that's agnostic is in the eye of the beholder. What you perceive as value might be a reach for others. Although it's with your projection system, which is a conglomeration of projections, it's less of a necessarily a personal input and more of a better view of what your draft pool is probably viewing as value. So you're probably more capable of value taking from the middle. You can still do that at the end. I had a couple picks like that where I took quote unquote value, Alex Bregman being one of them. But in other instances, though, you really have to make that decision. The other thing too is, so I took Acuna at 1.2. I immediately had to think, okay, what's my pitching plan? Am I going to go two guys here? Am I going to wait till 4 or 5? How am I going to handle that? Fortunately, that part's worked out okay. I did Woodruff and Kershaw, and that part's been okay. But whereas I think when you're in the middle, you're like, okay, I can take the hitter in the first round, or I can take when Garrett Cole unfathomably falls to me at 9. Okay, I'll start my draft off with a pitcher. You have that latitude a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And if you think about it, so far this year, the first 2 rounds of pitchers, other than somebody we might be talking about today in Luis Castillo, everybody actually has been a hit. And such a hit that they've been so solid that their value has been an absolute no-brainer. Like if you picked, Corbin Burns or Woodruff, anybody in the first 2 rounds, DeGrom, Bieber, you've gotten your money. You've gotten your stability in the pitching staff. And if the optimal strategy this year was pitcher in the first 2 rounds, hitters for 6, 7 rounds, and then a couple of pitchers after that. And I was able to do that in most of the leagues I'm in, and certainly Cole falling to me at 9 really helps. There we go. So far, so good for me in other leagues. I'm in first place in Labor and first place in Tout Wars. So hopefully somebody presses the button and stops the year right now. But if not, hopefully I'll last another 5 months or so.
Well, I don't want it stopped yet because I have so many injured players, so many guys who are coming back from injury, so many guys that are underperforming. I want the season to play out just a little bit more, and then maybe I'll sneak back up into the standings.
I just want to play when it's warm weather again. I want to, I want to see, like, is the downgrade in power and the downgrade in batting average, is that going to hold all season long, or is weather a factor of that? A function of that a little bit there too. How much of it is? Because typically April is the worst month of the season for hitting. But it's coming into May, we've still seen some really bad weather situations. Colorado had a snow out on Monday for crying out loud. I want to see Colorado in the summertime. I want to see the ball take off a little bit more because, we've had to kind of adjust. And that of course changes our draft strategies too.
Yeah, no doubt. Weather has played an extreme effect in the first month here. Let's talk about putting players back into lineup. So, let's say you have the situation, Jeff, to start out, a struggling hitter that you've benched. So, for example, Lourdes Gurriel in 10, 12-team leagues. I own him in a 10-team league, and I've been sitting him. He's just not playing as much, and he's just been bad. The question is, how do you decide and when do you decide to put him back? Is it the question of, let's say he goes off on the weekend and hits 2 homers and steals a base. Maybe he's got a great upcoming schedule at hitters' ballparks. Maybe he's just now finally moving up in the order and you say, okay, it's time to put him back. Like, what is it that triggers for you to put a player who you're sitting because of bad play back into your lineup?
If I can, I try to watch him a lot more. I want to, we all want to watch our good players, right? We want to, if we have a lot of leagues, we want to pay closer attention to the stats page, live scoring on our good teams. But that's exactly backwards. You should be watching your struggling players so you can make more informed decisions. What are the quality of his at-bats? Is he making good contact and he's fouling him off? Or does he look lost up there? And that's a big difference. And sometimes you really can do that. With Gurriel in particular, they're moving him down to 8th in the order. With Springer out for a pretty extended period of time, that might change my approach a little bit because, when they play, they were in Atlanta, so he had to sit a little bit. But in AL ballparks, he's going to play. And that's pretty much it. I think maybe every once in a while you maybe sit him. Like I think you said league size is important. The other thing too is we've seen so many outfielders get hurt so far that you may not even have that choice. Playing time can be king, especially in a deeper league, in an AL only or a 15-teamer. That's something you're like, I guess we'll just have to grit your teeth and get it and go with it a little bit there. And then finally, I think it forces you to kind of go back and look at the previous seasons. What was that his true level? Let's dig into those numbers a little bit more. Does the end result reflect does the end result, is it supported by the underlying stats? Is there something I missed earlier? And acknowledge it. Maybe I was wrong on draft day.
Right. Anything to add, Ruben?
Yeah, I want to just echo exactly what Jeff said about not being able to have the choice of being able to sit a player like that. Like me and you, Ara, we have a team. It's a 13-team. We have a team together, 13-team league. We have Lourdes Gurriel, and we have to play him because we don't have a choice. The choices of outfield, because so many people are injured, is so thin that I think I'd rather keep him in my lineup and just hope he gets hot in something like that. Another thing you can look at is schedule. If you look at the Yankees right now are not hitting. If you have Aaron Hicks, he's been hitting well. He's hit like 300 over the last week or so. But look at who they're playing the next couple of days. They're they're playing Tampa now, but then they're playing Baltimore and then they're playing Texas. All those teams don't have that great pitching. They have an occasional pitcher who's good, but otherwise they're not that great pitching. So those are teams that hitters who are not doing well can actually get better.
I'll mention 4 things to really think about. And there's no one right answer for every single situation. It always matters on your specific situation. But 4 things to consider. Number 1 is the level of the player matters. If it's Mike Trout and he's struggling, you're going to play him anyways. You drafted him as such. You can't survive without him. Even though he's cold, you're probably going to play him a lot quicker. If you're somebody at the bottom and they're not doing well, you're going to have a lot less leash. You're going to wait till they heat up. So the level really matters. 2 is suspicion of injury. I think that a lot of times the question is, why are they struggling? Is it because they're cold? Is it unluckiness? Look at their BABIP. Look at some of the luck factors. And injury could be a reason. If that's the case, you might want to keep him out longer until you think he's better. The third thing is playing time and lineup spot matters. If somebody's playing every day, I'm much quicker to bring them back. If somebody is losing playing time, I don't want a guy who's playing 3-4 days in my lineup. I want a guy who's playing 6-7 days. And the fourth thing is it matters what your alternatives are. And it has to do with league size, of course. If you're in a 10-team league, you probably have some good alternatives to Gurriel. We're going to just keep taking him out of the lineup. I haven't played him yet in this 10-team league in a long time. But if you're in a 15-team league, he's probably better than your 5th outfielder. You're going to stick with him just for that upside and that chance because you're probably not going to get all that much from that 5th outfielder as it is right now. So those are the 4 things I would consider. Let's talk about pitching, though. Pitching is very different, in my opinion. What do you do, Jeff, if you have a pitcher that you've taken out to struggle? I'm not sure if Luis Castillo you've decided to take out in 15-team leagues, you're probably keeping him in. 12-team leagues, maybe you've sat him for the Coors Field start. If you do take him out, maybe a Kyle Hendricks you've taken out because he keeps on struggling. When do you decide to take out a pitcher, and how do you decide when to put him back? Is it you have to have 2 good outings in a row? Does he have good matchups? If you have a 2-start week, is that a must-start for these pitchers? Like, how do you decide about pitchers? Are you more cautious than hitters?
I probably am because there's 9 spots. You can probably find more guys. You can probably find a 2-step guy. And I think you have to look at the specifics. And with Castillo, the velocity is down on all 4 of his pitches. His go-to pitch, the changeup, drew 1 swing and miss last time against Cleveland. That's a real problem. That's typically you're getting 25% swing and misses on that pitch. If you can't miss bats, what are you doing? And then he's going to Coors Field next. Now, the Rockies are making it hard for us to make that decision. Typically, your Coors Field start, you're like, yeah, absolutely, no way, no how. Then you look at that Rockies lineup, you're like, oh, maybe no Trevor Story tonight. Ooh, you're really tempting me here. And I don't know. So, but for me, it's a happy accident. I'm a Reds fan, yet I still don't have Castillo. It wasn't necessarily that I was fading him, but I did like other 2nd-round pitchers better. So I kind of had a 3rd-round grade on him, so I just never got him. So that's a little happenstance there. But if I do have Kyle Hendricks on my watch, so it's not like I was all knowing. And Hendricks, I did sit him. I sat him the Atlanta start in the online championship league. And then last week, a 2-start week, I sat Kyle Hendricks because the velocity is down. And he was facing the Dodgers with one of those 2 starts. Little did I know that the Dodgers was the start I wanted, and then the Pirates was the death trap.
Well, that's pretty unlucky there, and that's ironic. I think that it matters for pitchers what type of pitcher they are. If they're a ratio pitcher like Kyle Hendricks, well, he's there to help your ratios. And if you can't trust that he's going to do that, you shouldn't play him. I mean, you're not in there for the strikeouts. You can make up some better strikeouts on the waiver wire, frankly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly if he's not doing well in a position to win, he's not going to give you the win. So I would hold him out a little bit longer. Somebody who's a high strikeout guy, who's is a 4.5 ERA guy anyways. Well, even if he's struggling a little bit more, you're still going to get those strikeouts, and you hope that he's going to do better. So I might be more inclined to play one of those guys. As for 2-start weeks, if you're in a deep league and you can't start Kyle Hendricks, even in that situation, what the heck is he doing on your roster? I mean, it's a really bad situation if you can't play a 2-start pitcher who's probably your first or second or third pitcher that you've taken.
Well, and to your point, and I agree, and I've made that statement before. However, I'd say there's a line of demarcation. When it's someone that you've taken the top 10 rounds and you're not using him, you're hoping that it's just, okay, he fixes whatever. It's a mechanical tweak. He fixes it and they move on. Weather warms up, he pitches better. You could say the same thing about Castillo. But if it's like your 5th starter and you that or someone you got in the teens, well, yeah, I might waive him. I very well might, especially if I have 6 red suitcases with my hitters, which seems to be the case for a lot of teams. Then I might say, okay, I have to cut someone, or I might cut that injured guy. But you're right. If you can't use them in a 2-start week, what are you doing? Especially if one of those 2 starts is against the Pirates.
Exactly. Ruben, anything to add?
Yeah, well, with Kyle Hendricks, at least you had a glimmer of hope. He had at least one good outing. But Castillo, if you look at his numbers, he's given up since opening day 10 runs. Then against Pittsburgh, he went 7 innings, 4 hits, 0 runs, and earned runs, anything like that. You thought great. Then 4-3, 6. That's you can't have that. That's not a number 1 starter because people draft him as number 1. Not only that, his K per 9 is down, and you have him there besides. The main thing, besides hopefully you're getting a lot of innings and nice ERA and whip, but he's there for strikeouts. If you're not getting the strikeouts for him and you're nervous about a start, this is why you should have guys, middle relievers, on your bench. A guy like who I'm going to mention later, Yusmeiro Petit, the guy on the Athletics. He's a stabilizer. If you don't want to throw a guy who's not performing, this is a time when you can use those guys, and when the guy turns it around, then he can do it. Even Luis Castillo, because I know I'll get another lead that me and Ariel are in together. We're sitting Luis Castillo this week. We may even sit him next week. Why? He was killing us. We also have Kyle Hendricks on the same team, I believe. So you can't have both of them, and it just kills you.
Yeah, so just to defend Castillo a little bit, does anybody here know who has a higher BABIP in baseball than Luis Castillo? 357 BABIP. Who has a worse BABIP? Anyone want to guess?
Objection, leading. No, go ahead.
0.
Tell us.
No, that's it. He is the leader. There's nobody who has nobody has worse. So he's been the most unluckiest pitcher, and his strand rate is 54%. It should be in the 70s. And his walk rate is actually the lowest of his career. So the problem is generating the whiffs, and we've said before in the podcast here, it's some kind of pitch mix issue.
Yeah.
His curve, his changeup is not, which is a great pitch, is not working as well because he's throwing more of them, and maybe it's not being differentiated from his fastball enough. So maybe there's a tweak there, a little bit more luck. I wouldn't cut bait on him. If you want to sit him for a brief period of time, okay. I mean, his next 2 outings are versus San Francisco and Milwaukee at home. To start, you might have to put him back. I would think you have to put him back.
Counter to your counter, though. The Reds' defense is horrific. Just
that won't
horrible.
Get any better. That won't
Terrible.
Get better.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we now have Kyle Farmer playing some shortstop. That they with Joey Votto being out, they've shifted things around. So at least Suarez is playing third, Moustakas is playing first. But when Kyle Farmer is considered an upgrade defensively, I mean, that's your sign right there. That's a problem. The other thing is the relief pitching has been horrific. So that also explains the strand rate too. And the thing is, I have more confidence in that curing itself than I do the defense. You saw some signs that Amir Garrett's turning around. Lucas Sims had a good outing this week. Sean Doolittle actually pitched really well. The caveat is it was against the Pirates, so don't. But Garrett has actually had 5 of his last 6 outings have been pretty good. And the one that wasn't so good was Kyle Seager getting him where he just, dug out and hit what looked to me to be a pretty good pitch, a low slider that just Kyle Seager just got him. I mean, and that Corey Seager just got him. I mean, and that happens.
But what if he has Ubaldo syndrome, whereas a pitcher like Ubaldo Jimenez, who's good for 2.5 years, everyone's high on him, and then just suddenly it's just gone. That's not out of the realm of possibility. Remember, his velocity is down, so there may be an injury there. There may be something going on. But people were sold on Ubaldo Jimenez because he was doing so well in Colorado. After 2.5 years, they traded him. He was out of the league in 3 years after that. What if Luis? I'm not going to say he is because I'm a big, I love Luis Castillo. I've had him every year except this year. Actually, I've had him every year on my team, and I like him. But what if he turns into another Ubaldo Jimenez?
Well, and ballpark factor is a big part of that too. Remember when Ubaldo threw that no-hitter? He threw a ton of pitches, and I don't think he was. You could almost draw a straight line from that new no-hitter on to his level of effectiveness. It was interesting, but the thing is, you can maybe beat Coors Field for a season, half a season, but it usually takes its toll on you with the pitching side of things, and to the point where you're like, oh yeah, he's out of Coors now, he's fine. No, he's probably messed up forever.
There you go. Before we do our next question, we're going to have our Injury Gurus Trivia of the Week.
Well, we're talking about players returning from injury, so I thought I'd throw in a little injury question here. So far, when I did this research, 364 players have hit the IL this year. Compared to last year, 2 months, do you think, are we on pace, ahead of the pace, or behind the pace of last year's injuries?
Are you counting COVID as an injury?
I'm counting COVID because I'm comparing it to last year.
And then I'm going to say more.
I think it's about on the same pace. I think it's been differentiated. I think there's more hitters that are hurt this year. We haven't had, in my mind's eye, we haven't had the same catastrophic pitching injuries that we had last year, at least at the top. Last year we had those 4 aces out, 3 in spring training and 1 week into the season, where this year we really haven't had as much of that.
Well, last year, 2-month season, 184 hitters went on the IL last year. So far, through a month and a half, not even 2 full months, 150 hitters are on the IL already. So we're actually slightly ahead of pace. Pitchers were actually a little bit behind.
Yeah.
Last year.
You got that right, Jeff.
272 pitchers were on the IL in 2 months last year. This year, we're only at 213. So there you go.
And and it's interesting because all spring training, all draft season, we heard how pitcher innings are going to be down, how teams had plans to manage their pitchers. They're going to skip some starts. The Angels and the Mariners were going with 6-man rotations. The Rangers were going tandem starters. The Rays were going to do Rays things. But did you really hear too much about that managing the hitters? I don't recall too many stories where they said, okay, we got to get these hitters more days off. We got to stagger that. And if you look at roster usage, teams carrying 14 pitchers and 12 hitters, it's impossible to platoon hitters when you're only carrying 3 men on your bench or 4 men on your bench. And you just can't, and one of them is the backup catcher.
And Stefania Bell hit it on the head when we had her on. She said that this year we're going to have a lot of players with muscle injuries, pulling this, pulling that. And it's exactly what's happening because players are just not completely in their full form yet just because we had a short season last year and everyone's trying to be ready for the entire long season this year. Now, the question is, what do we do with them? When the player comes back, Jeff, when a pitcher comes back, let's say you're going to get, I don't know, you have John Gray, who's injured. Would you have put him back into your lineup right away, or do you wait?
I think a lot of that would depend on the matchup and the location. Obviously, John Gray, any Rockies pitcher is unique in that respect. But I'd probably say no play for Mr. Gray.
But in general, for pitchers.
I mean, come on, guys. You're New Yorkers. You got to get that joke. Come on, work with me here. But you're not Clyde Frazier fans? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. But no, typically, I would say if he's one of my top 3 starters, I'm getting him right in. And I just, because even 4 innings of good work is still useful. It's still getting good ratios. You're still getting the strikeouts, even if you don't get the decision. If it's someone like Dinelson Lamet, I might be, and he might project to eventually be a 2 or 3, but we know there's no way he's going 5. There's no way he's going 4. It's like, I'll probably wait on him. Also, I don't have Lamet rostered anywhere, so of course I'm not going to be going with that. But I would say that a lot of it depends on the context. Otherwise, like everything else, it's the cop-out answer, but it's true. I mean, the elite pitchers you're going to put in, the next level down, it's matchup oriented, and you're going to decide, okay. And of course, what injury are you coming back from? Are you coming back from Tommy John? You coming back from any sort of arm injury? I might be more circumspect. If you're coming back from, I don't know, COVID, I'm going to roll with him. Corbin Burns, of course, you're going to get in the lineup right away.
Yeah, I mean, with pitchers, if you think that it's a high strikeout ratio pitcher, even if they have a little bit less innings, it's probably okay. If you have a pitcher who's really in to get the win, right, to give you some, take down your ratios and, you have 6 innings and take down your ratios, well, they're probably not going to last that long because they're on pitch counts when they come back. So it's tricky there. And also, it depends what the injury was, shoulder, if it was Tommy John or whatever it is. You want to test them out. I don't want to throw somebody who's going to kill my ratios. And the thing about the difference between hitters and pitchers in terms of injury returnees, hitters, there's only one ratio. And so if you go 0 for 20 in a week, it doesn't really kill you. But if you have a pitcher who has a 7 earned run outing in 3 innings, that can really kill your ratios for a good week or so. So it really is. You're playing more defense in pitching than more than hitting. Hitting, you're playing more offense when you're playing. So I would think about it that way. Now, for hitters, I would say, coming back, does it matter the categorical profile of the player? Meaning, if it's a stolen base player, we're not talking about Mondesi. You're getting Mondesi in your lineup right away when he gets back. But I don't know. Let's say John Birdie gets hurt in a deep league. Are you putting John Birdie right back in when he comes back? Because sometimes players sometimes players who comes back for steals, maybe they hurt their hamstring, maybe they'll steal a bit less. Is the statistical makeup of the player a factor at all for you?
Sure, of course. If he's a one category player, you probably don't want to rush him back. But then again, you could make the straw man argument and say Miles Straw needs to be back in there because he does that one thing and you don't want to miss it. I remember when Malik Smith came back from the, I think maybe he wasn't even IL, but he was benched for a couple of days, and so he got benched in a lot of fantasy benches. And he had a 5 stolen base game. After he got sent down and called back up. I mean, it's part of the Malik Smith experience, and it applies to a lot of those steals only guys. It's the worst thing in the world to see that one scarce category on your bench going off, because it's so hard to find the stolen bases to begin with, and then you bench it and you try to time the mark and you time it wrong. Just what a nightmare. One of the reasons why you try not rostering those type of players to begin with. You want to try to find it's easier said than done. Find the well-rounded players that get you the stolen bases plus something else. Unfortunately, those kind of run out of quantity after the 10th round.
Right. Let's talk about prospects. Let's say we take Bobby Dahlbeck sent down, or Joe Adell, who didn't stick completely at the majors. Do you wait as they come up to put them in their lineups? I mean, even let's take like Jared Kelenic. Are you putting him in, if you have him on your team, are you putting him right in your lineup the very first week? Do you think differently about prospects than other players?
I think if it's a guy you found worth stashing all this time, you get him right in there. Especially Kelenic. I mean, Kelenic is someone that we all drafted as a starter. It's not like we draft him in the 25th round and, hey, maybe he'll get the call. No, this is someone that we're counting on him. We're counting on the Mariners doing the right thing at some point sooner rather than later. You just get him in there. He's batting
leadoff in his first game. So
it's a beautiful thing.
You bat leadoff. I'm playing people who bat leadoff in general on any team. But what about like Dahlbeck? I mean, comes back. They need a spare body. Somebody gets hurt, so you got to bring the prospect up. Is that a situation where you say, you know what? Let me just wait and see if he's hot before I get in my lineup?
Well, the problem with that approach is you miss out on when he first starts crushing. And the thing with Bobby Dahlbeck is he was actually hitting the ball hard for a while without getting the results. And him specifically, I mean, that's tough. But that's the point, is you look at the underlying situation there. Does he look bad? Are you watching his at-bats? Why did he get demoted for a little bit? Why did he get lowered in the order? Why is he getting benched here and there? Now, if it was that he was really lost, okay, yeah, I might be a little bit more cautious in bringing him back into my active lineup. And of course, the big equalizer is, what are my options? What are my alternatives? Who am I going to put in if I don't put him in?
Well, what about Joe Adell though? Joe Adell, he played last year. He did not do well. He's in the minors now. He's killing it in the minors right now. If he's called up next week, are you sticking him in your lineup?
Yeah, because if he's called up to play. And I think that, remember, he didn't really have a full AAA season. He got the end of a AAA season in 2019. And he actually wasn't crushing it then. I almost feel like sometimes you need that little taste of success and then you move on. Heck, A-Rod got sent down 3 times. And I'm not saying Joe Adell is A-Rod, don't get me wrong. But, elite players sometimes struggle with their first taste, and then they get the call again and they hit the ground running the second time. And I think that's very possible with him. You look at Dylan Carlson last year, struggled, briefly got sent to the alternate training site, came back September, was hitting the middle of the lineup in the playoff series. He's ready to go. And, he's fully formed now. So you go with it. And it's a leap of faith. I think if you wait until he actually does something, well, you're going to miss out some stats. If you're blessed with having, 5 other full-time playing outfielders, great. Then you can make that a choice. As we alluded to earlier, more often than not, you're getting a platoon guy at best.
I also think that pitchers are different. Stud pitchers like Logan Gilbert's being called up. I think you're more prone to start him, and because people haven't seen him before, so he'll probably do better in his first outing. Because a lot of these stud pitchers, they come up, they do great in their first outing, and you know what? That's what you want, because people, once you start to see him, they actually have a book on him, how he's pitching now compared to the minors. So I think when it comes to pitchers, it's viewed a little bit different than the hitters.
True, unless you're Daniel Lynch, in which case you get hard and your AL Tout worst team is getting punished for it. But wait, I'm only talking about myself again.
Well, again with pitchers, I'm always a little bit more cautious again because of the ratios. But what I have noticed is some of these pitchers, again, as Ruvain said, the major league hitters haven't seen him. They don't have the exact book on him. They do well the first couple of outings, and then after 5 outings, they hit a wall and they struggle. Look at Jordan Yamamoto, of all people last year. He had a great couple of first outings and then struggled. So you got to make sure you get them out before they hit that wall. Yeah. So it's always a matter of timing, which is the problem. But again, a high prospect, a good prospect pedigree. I'm playing even the pitcher, but I'm being cautious. I certainly wouldn't start them against, the Dodgers or some really good Houston. How about Houston? What kind of offense they have? Wow, best team in baseball.
And I'll say this: our abilities to analyze these pitchers when they first come up is getting better and better. First of all, there's video out there everywhere, stuff we didn't have before. We get minor league metrics that are better than ever. And then, of course, you got like Pitcher List and Baseball Savant. You've got all these tools at our disposal, and you can see, okay, is he getting him out because he's really dominant, or is he just getting him out and, it's good, chickens are going to come home to roost? And, Yamamoto, he wasn't dominant. He was a guy that, was giving up decent amount of hard contact, getting outs. He wasn't really, dominating the opposing hitters. He was not Zach Gallen.
Right. This year is also tough because there was no minors last year. Yep. So you don't have the full.
That's right.
You don't even have the full. What did they do last year in the minors? Guys are coming up this year. Should have had a full minor season last year, and maybe even a cup of coffee up in September. So it's very hard this year to do it. So
yep.
I'd be a little bit more cautious with the pitchers, only because you just don't know the story. And again, of course, it's always up to what you have on your team and your alternatives. Just a question about the waiver wire and hot players picking up. My question to you is, what do you do when to notice a hot player? Baseball players are streaky. People who are hot tend to be hot for a nice period of time before they cool off. What do you look at when you're picking up players off the waiver wire for pitchers and hitters? Are you looking at, wow, this guy has thrown 2 good outings of 6 innings and 2 runs or less, or this guy's throwing 9 strikeouts a game, get him right now, put him in? For waiver wire hitters, maybe if the guy has a 3 home run week, that's the time to get him. What are you looking at for hitters and pitchers to say, this guy's hot, I want to pick up and play?
I mean, I am looking at matchups a lot when it comes to pitching. I'm looking, okay, who did he face and who is he about to face? Is this team strike out a lot? What do they do against righties or lefties? Although you can get a little bit of a trap with this sample right now, especially looking at that. But if you did that this week, then you could have found, like maybe in a 10-team league, you could have found Robbie Ray sitting there going against the Braves. And normally you think, oh gosh, I don't want to have him go against the Braves. Oh wait, the Braves are second to last in WRC plus against lefties so far this year. I know it's a small sample, but okay, let me face that peril. It's hard to, he's going to get you 2 starts. He's a strikeout upside guy. He got you a really nice outing. I don't think he got the win, but I think he pitched very well, if I recall correctly. That's the sort of thing where you can kind of dig in a little bit more. Now, obviously, Robbie Ray is more of a known commodity, but he's also a risky commodity because of all the walks and the home runs he's allowed over the course of his career. But lesser known pitchers, it's harder. It's harder. I mean, you're really hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, so you don't get gombered. And we've all made that mistake too.
Yep. Sure.
And what about Danny Duffy? He was great, and the last couple outings have been Does that mean you bench him? Does that mean you shouldn't have picked him up to begin with?
You should have picked him up to begin with. It's been beautiful if you did.
If you picked him up early enough, but in the last this past outing that he had, he didn't pitch that well. He looked okay the time before. A pitcher like that, for 2 or 3 starts, and they're starting to get into a slump like that, then maybe something mechanically wrong, and they have to fix the mechanics, and they should be okay. For hitters, I think you have to look at like a 3 to 5 game span where they have one full series where they do well and another 2 or 3 games where they can carry it over, and that's when you be able to see whether or not the player's hot. If a player just hits like 3 straight games, it may just be the stadium, it may just be the series, it may just be that he I don't know, he changes underwear and wearing different underwear. There could be anything that can be played into it because these players are superstitious and you never know.
Right. All we need to do is get reporters in the locker room so we can see their underwear changes, and we're fine. But no, honestly, I try not to time the market with hitters so much. I mean, you have to, especially when you're trying to find guys that are emerging. As guys that, it's a leap of faith that Adolis Garcia is going to be able to do something that he's actually, because if you wait, he's gone. At least in the leagues I play in, you don't get that luxury of waiting. You take the chance on him, and you have to decide pretty quickly. And the funny thing is the statistical cues with Garcia would suggest that he's probably a good avoid because he struck out so much, in the course of his career. 159 strikeouts in AAA in 2019, if I recall correctly. That's a sign that that's something you don't want. But yet, if you took that chance, you've been richly rewarded.
Yeah. What I look at when I'm looking at the waiver wire for hitters, I'm looking at past 14 days worth of stats. I try not to say, wow, the guy had, Brandon Crawford hit 3 home runs in a 5-game span this year. It's not, oh my God, an instant pick up and play. I look at the past 14 days. And to be honest, I'm looking at at-bats. Who in the waiver wire has a lot of at-bats? Who's got a lot of just hits? Just sort by those two. Forget about home runs and stolen bases for the moment. Like, who's getting the playing time? Who's getting who's at the top? That's a good way to do it. Look, sure, if you have room on your team and you have an Adolis Garcia, you got to jump on him to pick him up because they won't be available in the waiver wire, and he could be there. You don't have to play him immediately. Obviously, it would have been good if you did for him specifically. But you might want to pick up quickly. To play, though, I like to wait a little bit longer in general. But yeah, 14-day span is what I'm looking at. For pitchers, I'm looking at the past 3 starts. I'm not looking at 1 start. Anybody can have a good start here and there. They're major league pitchers, right? I'm not looking at 2. I'm looking at 3. What is the quality over 3 starts? To me, that's a good base to say, okay, this guy is worth a play. As for Danny Duffy specifically, I said this in the show once before. He is a super member of the waiver wire team, right? If you took the best players on the waiver wire, right? Danny Duffy's there. He's awesome on the waiver wire. He's a super player there. You pick him up, he stinks. You then drop him, and then he comes back and he has a fantastic outing on the waiver wire. So wherever the waiver wire is, he plays well. On your lineup, he's terrible. So I would avoid him because I just have bad luck with picking him up. Every time you think he's going to be great, he goes back to the waiver wire, and they go, yippee! And he has another six
But that
innings,
also, and that brings up a good point, though. We all stream pitchers, right? Don't get attached to your streamers. They're streamers for a reason. There's reasons why they come with flaws. They have a nice run, but if you need the roster spot, move on. Look at and specifically at Duffy, he's faced Cleveland, He faced the Angels. That's actually a really tough lineup, and he got 6 Ks on that. That was impressive. Tampa Bay, no earned runs in that one. They struggle against lefties in particular. Detroit, Minnesota, struggling Minnesota in the cold. Cleveland again. Detroit again. There's no Yankees there. There's not even any A's or Astros there. There's no Red Sox there. It's
Sure.
Winter's coming. Even though the weather's warming up, it's winter's coming for Danny Duffy, and you want to head for shelter with him. His next start is against the Brewers, which they strike out a lot. I might be inclined to keep rolling with him on that one there. Then he gets the Rays again. He misses the White Sox this weekend. How beautiful is that? You don't want any part of the White Sox, especially in Chicago right now. So you'll take that. But yeah, and some of that is you just really have to kind of pick your spots with streaming pitchers.
Yep. No, you said it very well. And they're streamers for a reason, and you just got to use them as such. So on this show, we're going to do over the next couple of months, as we get to the middle of the season, more of a deep dive in some of our episodes on certain teams. Next week, we're going to have Sarah Sanchez to talk about the Cubbies and people like that. But Jeff, we have you on, and I know you're a Reds fan, so I figure we just ask you a couple of questions. Maybe you know the Reds a little bit deeper than most of us and can help us out. First question for you is, what is the closer situation? Who are you picking up for saves? According to Roster Resource, there's a 5-man closer committee. Could be anybody. Right. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. So on March 27th, I was doing the main event draft for the NFBC. And at the first break after 10 players, and because most of the people in the draft were actually in person in Vegas, I was doing it online. The report came out, or maybe, I don't know if it was the first break or the second break, but the report came out that we're not going to declare a closer. We're going to mix and match. You know what? Sometimes managers tell the truth. We like to project that they're going to, no, he's saying that, but he's really going to give one guy the job. Well, maybe he's not going to give one guy the job. Maybe it's going to be Amir Garrett one day. Maybe it's going to be Lucas Sims another day. Maybe it's TJ Antone another day. I think it's very plausible that that's the case. If there's a slew of lefties coming out, maybe Sean Doolittle gets that chance. Maybe Heath Hembry showing signs of life in Cincinnati may get a chance. I think it's really a mix and match situation. They might at the trade deadline add a reliever who might end up closing, and that way they push everybody back in line one step. I did pick up Amir Garrett this week in one of my 2 NFBC main events. 19-17, I think was the bidding. I was pretty pumped about that actually. Now he's serving his suspension right now, which is kind of a mixed blessing because he's going to miss 3 out of the 4 Coors Field games. And he did pitch well. He got in an inning and 2/3 against Pittsburgh earlier in the week. But I don't think it's one guy. I do think it's going to be mixing and matching. I think Sims is getting better. I think I trust him in my active lineup. I love Antone. I have him in TGFBI. And regardless of role, I want him active when I can because he's just good. He gets you strikeouts. And as you said earlier, that on weeks where you have tough starting decisions, just plug in the stud middle reliever and let him go. Now, this might not be the best week because of course Field for Antone, but point is he's a very valuable plug and play guy.
Yeah. So it's almost like if you need saves, the Reds are not a situation to go to. But that doesn't mean that they're not valuable, some of these players. And, of course, they'll pick up a save here and there. It's like the Rays. They're valuable players and worth playing in this game. And they will get you a couple saves, but you can't count on them for the bulk of your saves, right?
Plus, we're a month and a half into the season, and they have 5 team saves. That's it. 5. How many saves does Jake McGee have already? I mean, it's ridiculous. He has more than twice that many almost already. So, I mean, it's so hard to tell because you want to hope you get the right one, and you hope you get the right one at the right week for the right price. That's what it comes down to. A couple weeks ago, I was telling Ario that in one for the NFBC team we're in, we should get Sean Doolittle because no one wants him, and there's a possibility you can save, and you can get him for $1 because no one wants him. So, sometimes it's just a matter of luck when it comes down to this.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Let's talk about Nick Castellanos. He's been phenomenal so far this year. He's the number 10 player, not just hitter, the number 10 player in rotisserie. He's in 15-team league that amounts to a $32 player. It's phenomenal. Where does he rank for you? And maybe the way to do this is to do like a who would you rather. Rest of season, I think in terms of outfielders, Acuna, Soto, Betts, Trout, Harper, I think you got to go with those. Would you rather have Castellanos or Christian Yelich, Jeff?
Oh man, what a tough call because of the back injury with Yelich. Um, and he doesn't even run. That's the thing. Castellanos does have one bag, but uh, I think I'd go Yelich, but man, it's the point that the point is it's a tough call. It's not an easy decision, and
Right.
and draft day that was a no brainer, right? So I mean, I think that's where the conversation has turned.
Ruvain, what about you?
I think I go with Castellanos because of the health issue, but I got a better comp. Would you rather have Castellanos or Kyle Tucker the rest of the year? Because Kyle Tucker has done almost nothing. He's heating up the last couple of days, but he's done almost nothing, and he gives you that speed profile. But right now, Castellanos is just hitting better, and he's going to be in Cincinnati, and he hasn't warmed up, and he did well last year also. And he's just, I haven't liked Castellanos. So I think for myself, I'd rather have Castellanos than Kyle Tucker right now. And when it came to drafts, Kyle Tucker was much higher up than Castellanos.
Yeah, for sure. I'd go Tucker because of the speed, and I think we're going to need that. By the way, really good article in the Athletic today by Saros and Andy Baggerly about stolen bases, and are they really truly down, or are they just picking their spots differently? I suggest. Ariel, I think I saw you retweet it out too.
Yes.
So
Great
good
article.
stuff.
Great article. Got to read that.
Yeah, but Tucker, it's a little faith-based argument. I think he's going to come around. And I think he showed those signs. That's a little bit of confirmation bias. I think I thought he was going to do it. I've seen these recent games. Therefore, he's going to do it. There's a logic step there that might be missing, but it's close. I think that's a great comp. I mean, a great debate, I should say.
I'll say the answer in terms of this. I think it matters in terms of, are we talking value or talking necessity for your team? In terms of overall value, I would rather have Castellanos, and in terms of value to risk, I would much rather have Castellanos. I think that Castellanos has very low risk. I think that we know who he is. He's this high 30s, 35 homer type player. Doesn't steal, but that's who he is, and I have a very high probability, a very high chance of him succeeding. Tucker, its question is what he's going to do. I don't have that ability. Is he going to hit for average? I don't know. And for about the same price, I'd rather have the less risky player. In terms of team construct, Tucker does steal. So if that's a profile that helps the team out, he could be more valuable to your squad than Castellanos. But I think for the value, I think that Castellanos, in a vacuum today, I would take Castellanos over Tucker to start my team.
So if there was a trade in your league, Castellanos for Kyle Tucker, you'd have no issues with it.
Yeah, I mean,
no.
That's
I wouldn't either. I think it's an absolutely good challenge trade. I'm also on the team almost never ever reject a trade from your opponents. I mean, I hate overturning trades unless there's it's got to be really clear and clear instance of where they were conspiring and or they're to try to cheat the league. I'm very anti-veto.
What about Marcell Ozuna? Would you rather have Ozuna or Castellanos rest of the season?
Castellanos.
Yeah, I think so. Ozuna much more streaky. What about Cody Bellinger?
So I was lower than the pack on Bellinger. So that's I had like a third round grade on him going into the drafts, and so I don't have him in any single team. And part because of the injury, I thought, and not because of the injury that he's out for, but because of the shoulder. I also thought that I saw some batting average risk in him. I know he hit better in the playoffs, but I think I might go Casty over Bellinger. Just risk of re-injury, these muscle injuries that Stefan is talking about, right there. That's one right there.
I go Bellinger. I like Bellinger there. Bellinger it could be an MVP. Castellanos is not that level. So, and if Bellinger gets hot, I'd rather have Bellinger's hot than Castellanos is hot.
Okay,
Bellinger was better last year than Castellanos, but Castellanos was better than Christian Yelich last year. Was there any other outfield you'd rather have? I mean, Luis Robert injured, Starling Marte somewhat injured. We're gonna call Whit Merrifield a second baseman, so let's not bring him in. George Springer injured, Aaron Judge. I think that's where he fits in. He's pretty much a middle number one outfielder. and he was drafted as, call it, a mid to high number 2 outfielder. So that's really where his value is now. You guys agree?
Yeah, he's climbed for sure.
Yes. Now, Jeff, this is a question for you. Who's going to be better rest of season, Nick Castellanos or Jesse Winker? Who's going to have more fantasy value?
Casty, but don't get me wrong. My love for Jesse Winker is pure. But it's Castellanos. Just I think there's more power, and I think he's a better chance to accumulate counting stats. So I think Winker's going to be either batting first or second most of the year. I find it interesting they've been going Senzel first and Winker second lately, which actually is better for Winker. But I think there'll be times when he still bats leadoff when Senzel's not playing, for instance. And I just think it's kind of like when Chris Bryant was batting leadoff for the Cubs. He just doesn't get those RBI chances.
Let's talk about Tyler Mahle. He's doing some pretty good stuff. Looks like a really legit pitcher. Is he for real?
Sure. I mean, I think he showed the signs second half of last season. Since then, the velocity's up, the spin's up, the results are better. I put me on board.
Yeah, I mean, he's trending up. The statistic that I like to look at in season a lot for pitchers, it's such a simple statistic. It's K minus BB. It's walks minus strikeouts minus walk percentage. Just if you ever on your waiver wire, we talked about the hitters, just looking at bats. Just sort your waiver wire by K minus BB, and you can see who the interesting players are. 2017, 3%. 2018, 11%. 17%. Last year, 19%. 21%. It's just a complete, simple but slow upward trend. Mahle is for real. His ERA will be a little bit worse going forward. He does have an 87% strand rate, which is a little bit on the high side. But just take a little bit ERA regression, and he is who he is. Let's go to the waiver wire here. In our waiver wire segment, where we talk about maybe an interesting guy or two to pick up on your teams. Jeff, who's somebody that you might be targeting this week?
Oh, I mean, you start off with, of course, Logan Gilbert, and I'm assuming Kelnick's already taken. In leagues where I'm allowed to speculate on minor leaguers, Alek Manoah on the Blue Jays is a guy I want to take a chance on before he gets expensive. I did so in AL Tout Wars. He's had now 2 great starts. And Vidal Brujan is another one that you guys mentioned earlier. He's another one I think is a good ad. Ryan Bloomfield added him in AL Tout, so that's someone to look for a lot. And then you're just looking, for guys that are getting the playing time. You're really just trying to dig in and find those guys, whether it's Harrison Bader coming back last week, that was, or 2 weeks ago, that was an ad. You look for those sort of guys. You look to see, okay, when's JD Davis coming back for the Mets and how that's going to affect the playing time.
Yep, Ruvain, yours?
Yeah, well, I mentioned one of the guys already. I mentioned Yusmeir Petit with the Athletics. He's pitched 21 2/3 innings already, 15 Ks, an ERA of .83, a WHIP of .88, and he's only owned in 26% leagues in CBS. He's great for your bench, especially if you have a Luis Castillo and you don't want to start him. Exactly, you throw him in. And Jeff, you actually stole the guy I wanted. I wasn't going to mention Harrison Bader because he's only 20% owned in CBS. I actually picked him up in TGFBI last week because my outfield was ravaged with injuries, and he's been playing every day. He's batting .275, 3 homers, 2 stolen bases over the last week. He's batting .300 with 1 home run. Because the outfield is so shallow, if he's available, he's a good blend of power and speed. He's playing every day, and he should be playing every day for your team.
That was exactly the guy I was going to mention, Ruvain, Harrison Bader. He's one of these
amazing.
guys. Yeah, I actually mentioned him. I was on Colton and the Wolfman the other day, and I mentioned him. He is one of these guys that was not really taken that much in draft because he was injured, and people just, he's injured, so I'm not going to take him. But he's a 15-15 player. He's a power speed guy. Contact rate this year 85%. That's phenomenal. That's going to have a high floor batting average. His batted ball profile looks identical to last year. He was the same guy as last year, but maybe a better contact. 15-15 player, Harrison Bader, only 20% owned CBS. And I'll also mention Robbie Grossman. He's actually the 4th highest player in stolen bases in the league. He's a perfect 7 for 7. So he's picking his spots, as Eno says, and he's doing it. The only guys who are really around him, Whit Merrifield, Liriano, Trey Turner, kind of Falefa, but Robbie Grossman, he's not taking leagues. 30% owned in CBS leagues. He's somebody, if you need speed, playing every day. He's somebody you should pick up right away. The other guy I'll mention is Jake Diekman, only 40% owned on CBS. Oakland, are they doing a committee? Because sometimes it's Trevino, sometimes it's Diekman. Looks like they are doing both. It's another one of these co-committee
So I can speak to that. So they're definitely doing the okay. We're going to leverage our relievers for the best possible spots. Are there lefties coming up? What's the tough part of the order? The other night in Boston, Trevino faced Bogarts, JD Martinez, and I think Devers. It's like, okay. So it was the 8th inning, so it wasn't a save situation, but they wanted their best reliever facing the best hitters. It's like how Seattle uses Kendall Graveman, and you just have to kind of grin and bear it. And the answer isn't, okay, don't go get Rafael Montero, because that's when you get punished. Montero's hurt you lately. He gave up that huge home run to Gavin Lux, and that's something you just have to say, all right, well, I'm just going to get fewer saves. But the thing is, guys, it's okay, because it takes fewer saves to compete in saves right now. So if you're aiming for the upper third in saves in your league, it doesn't require the same number of saves as it has in the past, because more and more teams are doing the ace reliever concept, and you just
100%.
So it's okay.
Yeah, and as I was saying before this season started, especially I was looking at the Tampa Bay relievers, and people were like, well, Tampa Bay, no one's going to be the closer for sure. They have 12 guys in the team who'll get a save. The ball boy will get a save also. But if you look at their high-valued players, and the better ones are going to get a third of the saves. If you have a third of the saves and you're a good player, that's very valuable in fantasy, much higher than the market perceives. It happens to be Diego Castillo was the guy who won out, but that was because of injuries. But even if he wasn't, even if he comes up at the end of the year and he's got only 14 saves, there's not that many saves to go around, period, because everything's split, and he's a high-value player. I think that the market is just not paying the right amount for them. Yes, sure, if you get Edwin Diaz, if you get Liam Hendricks, if you get Chapman, sure, they're going to be much, much better, and of course, they are more valuable because there's a lower amount of saves, and they are the exact guys. But that's not to say that the guys who get small amounts, even a split, aren't worth it. So Trevino and Diekman are both worth rostering 100%. So even if they only get half the save or a third of the saves, good situations, good players, they will get saves. You don't need as many. It's an instant pickup for me right now. If Diekman's available in your league, you pick him up. If nothing else, he's a handcuff, right? Let's go to pitcher preview. Is there any pitchers worth taking? Well, we don't want to get Gomber this week, and there isn't a whole heck of a lot out there, but maybe Ruvain, is there any, let's go with you first. Is there any pitcher worth picking up for either a good matchup or a great two-start matchup?
Yes, if you want a lottery ticket, look at James Kaprielian. That's the guy from Oakland. He used to be on the Yankee, big prospect. He was in the Sonny Gray trade back in 2017. He's only 6% owned in CBS. He got one start so far. He got a win there. He went 5 innings, 6 strikeouts. He did walk 3 people, but he has playing time. Jesus Luzardo's on the IL. Mike Fiers is on the IL. He's got a decent schedule coming up. He's got the Houston Astros, which is not great, but he's got the Angels also, which is also not great, but he is supposed to be a top prospect. If you want a possible lottery ticket, this is the guy to go for.
Jeff, why don't you go first, and let's see if you pick the guy I'm going to pick.
Okay, I actually have, I mentioned him earlier, but Gilbert. He gets Detroit next week. Then the following week, he gets 2 starts. One at Oakland, I don't love, but the other a home start against Texas. Buy the hype. Steer into it. I'm going to be in the square and go ahead and take the hype prospect and try to max out the number of outings for him.
All right, you didn't take my guy. I'm going with John Lester, 30% owned. He's, again, one of these guys who just started late. He's building up his strength. His first 3 starts, 70 pitches, 85, 97. Look at his outings. 5 innings, no runs, then 5 innings, 3 runs. Then his last outing versus Philly, 6 innings, 1 run. He plays at Chicago and versus Baltimore. Those have a 227 team average and a 228 team average, 20th and 21st best in baseball. That's about as good 2 matchups as you can get. And Lester is a seasoned veteran. I think if you're looking for any streamer, I think that Lester is the guy.
Yeah, I'll throw one more. His former team, And are a lot like our TGFBI league, he's obviously way gone, but in CBS leagues, I bet you, I don't know what the roster percentage is. I don't have a league there right now, but Adbert Alzolay has got 2 starts for the Cubs. He misses bats. He looks totally legit for me. Gets a home start against the Nats and then a road start against the Cardinals. Not ideal, but not enough to scare me either. I think he's a guy I'd aggressively target if he's still available.
He is 60% owned on CBS, so he's probably gone in all the deep leagues. 10 and 12, you have a shot.
Yep.
All right, let's do a couple questions from our mailbag. A bunch of saves, guys, and a bunch of NL only questions here. Al says, I play in an NL only league where you lose stats if they go to the AL. Who are the most likely guys to be traded? Is it Story? Is it Baez? I'll start out by answering. I think that closers of value on crappy teams going nowhere are probably it. Richard Rodriguez.
Yes, of course.
Now, that's the obvious one. Jake McGee, possibly. I'll also throw in maybe some veterans who are doing well on teams going nowhere. Maybe a Chris Bryant if they don't want to extend him. Maybe Corey Dickerson on the Marlins, something like that. But the closers are a lock. I mean, that's definitely guys you want to trade if you can right now in an NL only, if you have that kind of rule.
Yeah, I mean, pick a pirate, right? I mean, it's Richard Rodriguez is, it's dereliction of duty if he doesn't get traded. You absolutely have to trade him if you're the Pirates. He's 31 years old. This is relievers burn bright, burn fast. You got to trade him. Tyler Anderson is an interesting case, guys. He's reviving his career with Pittsburgh. He's on a nice little run right now, but I think he's in his 6th year in the majors. He's a guy that's kind of freely available. If he continues this run, I think they at least need to listen to offers for him and see what's out there. Good left-handed starters are hard to find on the trade market.
Yeah, no, good guy who's doing great lately. Anyone to add, Ruvain?
Yeah, I'm going to add a couple of guys here. First of all, a guy who gets traded every trade deadline is Asdrubal Cabrera. It's a little bit deeper, but if some people need to roster him, like they use him for every position, he may get traded. Zach Davies, he was just traded for in the pot for the Padres. I think he's a possibility of getting traded. And if the Cubs are selling, this is the last year of Craig Kimbrell's contract. This is the year they would trade him. He has a vesting option for next year, but this is the year to trade him. And another guy we mentioned was Doolittle, because he can be a lefty specialist for a team that needs, like a team in the National League East, where a lot of the teams are very lefty heavy. And you know what? You need a lefty specialist. He would be perfect for them.
Yeah, that's going to be my first place Cincinnati Reds, though, so that's not happening.
There you go.
Actually, Luis Castillo's already down 3-0, guys. Maybe it won't. There will be training away players at the deadline. I don't know.
Here's a quick one. I think this is a very easy answer. In Roto, do you look at standings per period to assess your needs, or should you only look at future projected performance? Meaning, should I pay attention to the fact that Fantrax says I was the worst team in my league last week? That is a hard no, not even worth a big description. But yeah, look, things don't stabilize after 1 week. I mean, if you go even 3 weeks in the season, that's not going to stabilize. You should never look at any 1 week performance, period. Anyone differ?
Nope.
All
right.
100%.
Leland asks, when do you start deciding on stashing possible closer candidates like Jolie Hernandez or Spores, or if Kennedy were to be moved? That's the question. When is it good to stash the next guy in Pittsburgh or whoever? Is it 3-4 weeks before the trade deadline? Is that what you would do?
Is it? Oh, okay. So if it's an AL only league, Joely Rodriguez should probably be picked up now, before you have to have a bidding war on him. Because let's face it, he can't hurt you, and he's actually a good guy you can stash while you're waiting for your injured starters to come back. You can actually stash him on your active roster.
In mono leagues, this is a question more for, let's say, 12 to 15 deep league.
Sure, fair enough. Okay, so let's say it's 12-team mixed. Probably 2 weeks before the trade deadline, 3 weeks. The thing is, you don't want to stash too long, because especially if you have no IL spots, you're looking at all the injured hitters that you have. You're trying to stream some starters. It's really tough to just use up one of those roster spots on a guy that maybe might close a month from now. I'd say maybe 2 weeks before the deadline on those sort of guys. What do you say, Ruben?
I would actually say do it now. Why? Because you can plug them in. These guys, if they're going to be closers, then they have good stuff now. You're going to get good ratios now. You're going to get good strikeout rates now. I mean, players like Jeffrey Springs for Tampa. He's a lefty. He's not going to. He may close. He has 2 saves already. He's got 18 strikeouts in 16 innings. He's a guy you may want to play. A guy like Daniel Hudson is a little bit deeper. But if Brad Hand keeps blowing saves, he did it last year. Brad Hand lost his job last year. Daniel Hudson's a guy. You can plug him in. You can start him already because he's already getting the good ratios, and that's what you look for. Another guy, Adam Plutko. He's actually done very well, and if you watch the way Cesar Valdez pitches, I don't think he's going to be the closer for the entire year.
Don't watch Cesar Valdez pitch. That is actually a legitimate takeaway. As someone that has him on a team, you know, if you have them, don't watch your closer. Watch other people's closers. That's always the rule of thumb there. I think that's a good call for sure.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your team situation. How desperate you are for saves? Do you have injuries on your team? I'll say a general 3 to 4 week rule is probably good for me, but that'll be more or less depending upon your team need. Last question, Matt asks, I'd be curious to hear your take on Tatis again. How much did that 5-homer weekend against the Dodgers affect your opinion of him, or at least of his health? I was with you in downgrading him significantly prior to then, and now COVID. I think this question is directed towards me. I had an article out that you should pretty much seek out trades for Tatis right when he was hurt, because the market was actually very favorable to trade. I mean, some people would even offer Xander Bogaerts for him straight up, in which I would have taken in a heartbeat then. And my analysis was, listen, it's a probability distribution. It's not he will be out or he will not be out. There's a percentage chance he will. Percentage chance he's back right in the 10-day span. Percentage chance he's out a month. Percentage chance he comes back after a week and then gets hurt 2 months later when he has a reoccurrence. Percentage chance he's out for the whole year. And you do the math and you give some probabilities and you see what is the average of what he's worth. Of course, whatever average it is, it's more risk, right? It's not a sure thing anymore. Now there's uncertainty, so that, again, diminishes his price and value because of the risk. The fact that he hit that 5-homer weekend, and more importantly to me, he stole a base. He stole some bases. That changed the distribution. He no longer he's going to be out the whole year. That just sucked it up and said, listen, now the probability of him being out the whole year is very low. And the probability of him getting a significant playing time is much, much better. And you do that and his value becomes more. I'm not disappointed at all that I thought that way. And I probably would have sold Tatis for Javier Baez if I had him on my team, which I wouldn't because I didn't pick him. But I'm not disappointed in my thought process, and that 5-homer weekend for sure changed my thinking. But that's what it is. You play the risks. If you do this kind of math, in the long run, you'll come out better than not. Tatis is a special player. Maybe the math is a little bit different for the superstars than it is for any run-of-the-mill player. Maybe I didn't factor that in enough in my analysis, but I'm still okay with what I did, and that did change my mind. Any thoughts, Jeff?
Oh, we had similar processes there. Yeah, it is a assumption. It is a matter of assessing risk, and especially in the case of like Bogaerts, is like, yeah. And Fred Zinke and I did a whole podcast of, would you take this for Tatis? Would you take that for Tatis? And Bogaerts was a pretty easy yes. Now Baez, I probably wouldn't have, just because I question how high the batting average ceiling can get with him. Certain things with him I question now. Especially because the strikeout rate hasn't changed at all. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, the shoulder, that risk part of the shoulder hasn't gone away. That is still there. I mean, he's avoided doing the re-injuring it so far. But the key phrase is so far. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that even though he changed his swing completely from one-handed to two-handed, still was able to do it. That's very impressive. And I really think that risk analysis of injury has to be looked at in terms of the level player. I mean, great players do great things, and we saw that he was able to really master the new swing really quickly, which is unbelievable, even though he didn't even have any game situations, right? I mean, he didn't have a rehab start, and he was able to just do that, which is incredible. I think any run-of-the-mill player, J.D. Davis, is not going to have that kind of thing, for him. So, Ruvain, anything to add to that? You're the injury guy.
Yeah, my take is exactly the same like it was before, and exactly at the end of the last thing that Jeff said, that's the most important thing. It's still there. The injury risk is still there, and it's still just as high as it was when he first injured it. Yes, he's quote unquote managing it, but you know what? The best comp I can think of is, let's say you have a high pitcher. Let's say you have a first or second or third round pitcher who has an injury to their elbow, a UCL injury, and then they get better and they put him back in and they start doing well again. Does that mean it's not going to happen again? Does that mean it's not going to flare up? You have that risk. You have to play it as long as you can, but I would still try to trade him, because at this point you will get a ton for him, because people think, oh, he's fine, but you know what? It could flare up in the middle of the summer, or let's say June, July, and then he's done for 3 months. You could still lose a big chunk of playing time for him, and you can get so much for him right now just because he's raised his value so much.
One other context clue. Say you're sitting 10th at 12 in your league. Then the switch is reversed a little bit. Then you go for it. You try to buy low. You offer Javi Baez for him. I think that's where it's different. If you got to, then you have to take some chances, because I think we're not just the place. And here's the thing that's really important. Your previous question was asking about, like, do I look at weekly standings? Of course not. You don't. But season long, you look at where you sit in the categories. You look and see, am I behind in, how far am I behind in RBI and homers? Am I close to a pack? You go to Yahoo, and one of the things, they have the graphical standings. You can look and see, is there a big gap in certain categories? Do I need to make some aggressive moves, or am I just on the precipice of making a big jump? You need to look at all of that there, and that makes a huge difference.
I'll say it this way, because I talk about risk all the time. His expectation maybe is a little bit down because of the risk of him, missing time, but the risk is higher, right? There is a wider range of outcomes of Tatis because of the possibility of the injury.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it right, that it matters where you are in the standings. If you are in first place and you have Tatis, you probably want to de-risk your team. I'd rather even now take Bogarts, who I think is quite safer than him, because at any point he can miss a month from a recurrence, right, Tatis, right? And that could not get a first, whereas Bogarts, not as great a ceiling as him, but he's a much higher percentage chance to make that expectation, whatever it is. You want to, in general, if you're in first place, second place, if you think that the way it's going, to de-risk your team. But if you're at the bottom, if you're in the middle even, right? If you're in 7th place, 6th place, you need to jump up and make ground up. You need to increase the risk. You should be looking to trade even value to get Tatis. Like, give people more than what Tatis is worth. Just because the risk is greater, you want to increase your risk, right? I'm always thinking about de-risking, and that's why when I'm playing in the end of the season, a lot of people do not want to make 2-for-1 trades. They want the one, right? They'll trade 2 to get the 1. I'm always going the opposite. I find myself a lot, thankfully, in first, second place. I want to de-risk. I trade my stars away to get 2 good assets for about the same value, because I want 2 guys. I don't want my eggs in the same basket. I'll take 2 guys, so if one guy gets hurt, I still have half my stats going forward. It's something always people should really look about, and if nothing else, Tatis has highlighted it, and I hope he stays healthy all year. If he doesn't, I'm not going to jump up and down and say I'm right, but it's just something to think about. There's always risk whether you see it or not. No, it's the process, not just the outcome. All right. Quickly, any injury updates, Ruve?
Any injury updates, or how many should I give? We'll start with Jacob deGrom, who's on the IL with side or low back tenderness. The MRIs were normal, but the Mets, for once, are being extremely cautious with him, and they're actually letting him rest. He's only supposed to miss 1 start, though. Carlos Martinez was placed on the IL with right ankle injury. He actually said that he pitched through the pain through his twisted ankle, and actually it showed. But there's no timetable for him to return. Juan Oviedo could fill in for the now. Grayson Griner, a catcher for Detroit. People don't, it's not a popular name, but he's on the IL with a left hamstring strain, and Jake Rogers, one of the Tigers' top prospects, was called up. He's going to get playing time because Wilson Ramos is still out. Zach Gallen, who we mentioned earlier, is on the IL with a sprained right elbow. The Diamondbacks GM actually said the most likely path forward is a short, quote, no throw period, followed by a second round of imaging to assess healing. That's not good. Mike Soroka, he's scheduled to undergo exploratory procedure on his right Achilles to see why he has discomfort. This probably means that he has scar tissue buildup in the area, and that's why he's having the pain, so they maybe need to clean it out, and then he may be okay. And I want to end on a positive note here. Players who began rehab assignments who could be back soon. Jazz Chisholm, Brandon Rogers, Miles Mikolas, Kettle Marte, Anthony Santander, Steven Strasburg, Adalberto Mondesi, AJ Puck, Kyle Freeland, Christian Yelich just recently started. Even Byron Buxton, who I actually said should be traded a couple of weeks ago. I said trade him at his peak, just like you should trade Tatis at his peak. He's been cleared to throw and is expected to begin hitting in the batting cage soon.
Well, that's good news for Byron Buxton, who's been one of the fantasy darlings of the year. I mean, certainly you've gotten your money's worth so far if you have him. He can't get any hotter, so it's probably good to trade from that perspective and the fact that he gets always hurt a lot. But, I mean, he's propping up your fantasy team right now, that's for sure. All right, well, that's the end of this episode. Jeff, this was phenomenal. We covered some strategy. We covered some Reds. We covered some mailbag. We did it all. This was fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Always a fun time. And, it's great, talking with guys that, are really analytical about the process and really know their stuff. And thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Oh, our pleasure. Could you just tell the audience where everyone can see your work, read you, listen to you, and all things Jeff Erickson?
Sure, of course. First thing is hit us up on RotoWire. We have a free 10-day trial people can check out. Podcast listeners, either ours or others, rotowire.com/try. You can check us out there. Hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Erickson. I do 3 baseball podcasts for RotoWire. I do 5 baseball shows, radio shows on Sirius XM. So I'm overexposed, but there's many, many ways for you to kind of catch up with me there.
Jeff is a phenomenal listen and read all the time. I always catch at least 3 or 4 podcast shows of yours a week. Definitely the first one, my breakfast routine on Monday, is the one with Scott Jenstad, recapping the whole weekend. I mean, that's just there. And depending upon my schedule at work, you might be on during my lunch break on the radio. So great to hear your voice and great to talk with you.
You bet. Take care, guys.
All right, Ruvain, just tell everybody where all about your stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates on a daily basis, next man up, and how long players will be out for. I also have a weekly injury article, which I mention all the injuries I mentioned on the show, as well as others, on Rotoballer. It comes out every Saturday morning.
All right, I'm Ariel Cohen, right for Fangraphs, Rotoballer, CBS Sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at ATCNY, and of course, listen to me on the Beat the Shift podcast right here each week. All right, again, thanks to Jeff Erickson for joining the show, and from all of us here, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.